All right, well, welcome everyone to the Networking Masterclass for April. I'm your host, Dave Potter, and let's get started with the webinar. So if you are new to our webinar at Citrix, just a little bit of housekeeping, just so you know how things are working and what to expect. So we prefer to deliver the audio over the computer, but if for some reason that's not coming through for you very well, or if this voice does not sound loud and clear for you, and you can't hear me well, then I invite you to please try us on another option here. So whether you're on phone call or computer audio, consider changing your audio option. If you want to try the phone call and you don't see your number listed, then you can click on the link in the control panel called Problem Dialing In, where we'll display a number of local countries so that you can make a local call to join us through a phone call on the webinar today. Next, this is a live webinar, meaning we have a lot of people on the panel ready to answer your questions live today. And the webinar simply would not be the same if we didn't hear from you as we go through the content today. So to keep this interactive and fun, we invite you to post some comments, anything you're thinking, into the Q&A panel. That's the questions panel in the control panel on the right side of your screen. Ask your questions there, put your thoughts there, and we'll try to get back to you as quickly as we can on the webinar today. If for any reason we're unable to get back to you during the webinar itself, I invite you to email us at networkingmasterclass@citrix.com so that we can address your question offline. Finally, the session is being recorded, so if you needed to take a step away, perhaps you want to revisit some content, or maybe you just like to share the content with a colleague as follow-up or just watch it again, then feel free to take a break and come back. You'll be given a link in an email following the webinar so that you can come back and revisit the content from today. So who's with us today? I'm your host, Dave Potter. I run the second session of the masterclass. Stan is my colleague that runs the earlier session. Welcome anyone who is rejoining us from the first session today. Our guest presenters today are Abhishek Gautam, Niharika Kambalar, and Omar Salvi. And so going through us today, our presenters joining us will be sharing a lot of content that I think is very relevant to what's happening with us today, especially around the world. So what is the agenda today? So Abhishek will go first and we'll cover what's new with the Citrix Core ADC product and features. Following with that, Niharika will guide us through what's new and happening with pooled licensing, and we'll give you a live demo to show you some of the advanced capabilities of pooled licensing. And then to close things out, I'll provide some closing comments and we'll have our prize giveaway. So with that, and before we really get too into the weeds here, and before we get going with the content, just be aware of some things that are coming up. So just a sneak peek, our topic for May will be all about business continuity. So this is a big ask that we have. See a lot of people asking, and we're getting this a lot frequently outside of the webinar even, and even just in general conversations. And what we're seeing is that a lot of our customers and other people are having to move their business or relocate or even reposition their resources very rapidly to either accommodate a remote workforce or just the swell in customers that they're seeing online. So in keeping light with that topic and providing as much relevant detail as we can, we'll have a complete session in May on business continuity for Citrix networking. Lastly, we invite you to submit any requests for ideas or topics and anything that you'd like to see us address in the upcoming webinars for the year. We invite you to submit your questions into the Q&A tab to be considered for a future class. So we have some great prizes on offer, and today, the prize today as a token to say of our appreciation and say thanks for joining us is we'll be giving away a Sonos Play One speaker at the end of the webinar. So I'll be asking a question from the content today. It could be advanced, it could be very trivial, but I invite you to stick around to the end of the webinar so that you can be eligible to win this Sonos speaker. It is the Play One. If you're concerned about data privacy, the Play One actually does not record your audio. It does not have the built-in assistant. You can use the assistants on your phone and say, I want to play on that speaker, but the speaker itself does not listen. So no worries there if that's in the back of your mind. And talking about business continuity, we're seeing a big transition right now and a big need across the board. And so I just wanted to, before we get into a lot of our content and features today, I wanted to talk about a little bit about what we do specifically in Citrix networking for business continuity. First of all, we have a lot of availability built into the applications and our products already. So if you're using the Citrix ADC for load balancing, we have clustering and GSLV to allow you to distribute the application so that you no longer have to be active standby. You can be active active, and you can grow dynamically in different environments based on the need. We have auto scaling built into the solutions so that if capacity needs to change rapidly, we have a lot of features that addresses that need immediately. And then on the SD-WAN side, we have a lot of policies built into the product so that if you need to add an application or suddenly need to make changes to an application, dynamic and auto QoS is available to classify the application to ensure that your apps are delivered in the order and with the priority of your business needs. In terms of being able to shift workloads to the cloud, Citrix enables you to do that very rapidly and very conveniently. We have a lot of features available from GSLV to pooled licensing. We'll be talking a lot about pooled licensing toward the later part of this webinar today. And hopefully you'll be able to see using how you can use pooled licensing to really take advantage of maybe not having to over allocate some of your capacity. Maybe you don't even know what that allocation needs to be today. And with pooled, you would have that flexibility to be able to either move existing capacity into the cloud, expand it on-prem, or perhaps just need to move it around as the workloads shift. And we give you that capability with pooled licensing on the ADC. And on the SD-WAN side, we give you the ability to automatically deploy zero-touch provisioning of your new appliances so that you don't have to go out, provision, stage, build, and deploy your objects out in the field. Basically, it's plug and play. Finally, it would not be unique, and Citrix is really a key player when it comes to applications and applications first. So Citrix is an application provider, and in Citrix networking, we really dig deep on, our focus is on delivering the applications today. So enabling visibility with the apps that we're delivering through SD-WAN or primarily the ADC product, say you're using a web app in the cloud, is Citrix ADM. And in fact, our pooled licensing feature that we'll be talking about today builds on top of Citrix ADM to expand the licensing there. What you can do with ADM is that you can basically use it to provide a single pane of glass to manage, monitor your infrastructure. But that's just the beginning. ADM provides advanced analytics for all of the applications running through the Citrix ADC infrastructure. What that means is with ADM, now you can see what users are accessing what applications, where the users are coming from. And we really dig deep on the analytics side. So we realize at Citrix that apps are not always down hard. Sometimes apps really just fail marginally, and you only have maybe 5% of your users that are impacted. With advanced analytics and ADM, we give you the visibility so that you can see which users are having trouble and be able to take action and even troubleshoot directly within ADM itself. Finally, security is in everything that we deploy and handle within Citrix. So whether that's enabling your connectivity to an application, Citrix with the ADC requires you to have some basic level of security provisioned, whether that's TLS 1.3 or deprecating SSL version 3.0. We have your security in mind to meet the growing and rapid needs of business and line-wire security. And we do this across all of our products, whether that's on SD-WAN and you're tunneling your traffic or using ADC or gateway. Security is first and foremost. We provide advanced levels of authentication, and we make sure that we're always using the most relevant and secure protocols to deliver your applications and business. So with that, we're gonna kick things off and bring Abhishek online. But before I do that, I'd like to take a quick poll just to get a little bit of a pulse to see what our audience is feeling like today. So I think this is kind of relevant because we're seeing a big change, and we definitely see it in Citrix, and we're getting a lot of people saying, hey, my whole workforce is remote now. How can we get there quickly? So I have a feeling maybe this is gonna ring true with the audience. So if you would mind, there's a poll on your screen right now. If you would fill out the poll, basically we're asking, and we're just trying to get a pulse here to see if you're working remote, is it due to the current coronavirus pandemic? Now, we know that, and we realize that Citrix being a remote first company, maybe a lot of our customers are already remote workers, and that's great, but we're looking more specifically today to see if the reason that you're remote today is simply because of this big problem and this big change in our global need for staying healthy. So it looks like we're getting a lot of feedback here, and it looks like overwhelmingly up to 85% of you are saying, yes, in fact, I'm working remote today because of the pandemic. So that's reassuring and very important, because today we have a lot of information that we're talking about and sharing with you in terms of continuity, what we're doing to increase our security, as well as how you can leverage the Citrix products to manage some of the workload when all of your workforce is now having to be done remote. So with that, I'd like to bring on our first guest presenter, Abhishek. Abhishek, I'm going to bring you on and make you the presenter. Are you with us, Abhishek? I can't hear you, Abhishek.
Yes, Dave. You can make me the presenter. Yeah.
Will do. All right, you have it.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Abhishek, and I'm part of Citrix ADC product management team, and mainly responsible for core ADC feature sets. As per today's agenda, I'm going to cover 4 exciting topics, and these are part of our recent releases. These features are already out, and you can try it out. The first topic is on secure cookie changes, referred as same site changes. In ADC, we have introduced new option to address this. Secondly, I'm going to touch request retry feature, which is also referred as reload balancing functionality. And I'm going to show a short demo as well. Then is GSLV parallel sync. We'll talk about some architectural changes we did to make sync process much faster. And the last one will be functionality to insert client IP address in TCP option. So with this, we start the session, and the first topic is secure your cookies with Citrix ADC. So let's start the topic with a question, why there is a change in default behavior of cookie, and also what exactly is the change and the impact of the changes. And in this session, of course, we will go over how Citrix ADC can help in different ways to protect the cookies and also help application enable these, and that too without making any background changes. Let's understand why the changes. Security is important everywhere, and there is a continuous attempt by secured community to enhance the internet privacy and make our internet experience more secure. Now, no doubt or question that HTTP has become the de facto language of our internet conversation and any application. And having this, HTTP cookies have become an essential part of any web application. How cookie work is a browser will get cookies from a server as part of a response and will be inserted by browser on eligible subsequent request to the same domain. HTTP cookies are generally used by a web application to authenticate the user and the track user activities. Now, these cookies are often vulnerable to misuse by attackers, and hence cookies hardening is one of the first steps towards making our conversation secure. And now one of the commonly used attack is a cross-site request forgery. This is one of the HTTP vulnerabilities which attackers exploit and can use to hijack user account and take control of any web transactions. Now, what is needed is a secure by default model to handle cookies, keeping browsing experience faster and increase transparency and choice of control. This means a user should know how they are tracked on internet and who is tracking them. Now, with these new changes, all secure browser will stop sending third-party cookies in any cross-site request, unless the cookies are secured and flagged using standard called same site. Now this is IETF standard. And we will explore more on what exactly is cross-site request and what is same site in our next section, and also know how our ADC helps front-ending these applications. Before that, just to highlight that these IETF recommendation changes are already available by default in recent Chrome 80 rollout. So they have rollout Chrome 80 last month. They said these strict cookie checks will be pushed in phase-wise manner and to a limited population initially, but sooner they will expand the population. So we may see issues with an application who are using cross-site. Now Firefox also has planned to in near future to make this behavior as default. Now let's understand what is this same site cookie changes. An IETF standard called same site is introduced the concept of same site attribute. And with the same site attribute, website developers have the power to set rules around how cookies are shared and accessed over internet. Now, as we mentioned that HTTP cookies are generally used by web application to authenticate the user and to track the user activities. Any given web application can be accessed in a cross-site or same-site context. Now, if your HTTP-based application uses cookies and is never intended to access in a cross-site context, it is very critical to protect the cookies against any cross-site misuse. The same-site attribute can be set with the following values now, which is strict, lax, or none. Strict refers that it restricts the cross-site sharing completely. Lax means where sites belonging only to a common domain can set and access these cookies. And none is generic. This allows third-party cookies to track user across sites and in all the context. Now, what has changed from before? And answer is cookies with no explicit same site attribute. Currently, majority of cases in current world applications are like this, where same site is not present. In that case, the same site is none currently, and hence giving cross-site access by default. This now will be changed and treated as same site equal to lax. And as explained, site belonging only to a common domain can set and access these cookies once it is a lax. Now, for the ease of understanding, let me quickly explain what is difference between same site and cross site. Now, if your site in your browser matches the site in the request, then that is what is referred as a same site request or a first party cookie. And if site in your browser does not matches the site in your request, then you have a third party or a cross site context. Now, the question is where you are using these third party ones or cross site. So the answer is request for a remote resources scripts you are pulling from other sites to your website or an iframe. For example, you have YouTube video embedded in some third-party site is typically example of a cross-site context. Now, of course, these are genuine use cases and highlighted above for cross-site access of web applications, and browser can expect same site equal to none marked explicitly in each cookies, else it will be rejected and application might fail. So with all these changes, we don't have to worry much. Our applications are front-ended by Citrix ADC, and the next section we'll see how Citrix ADC helps here. The first case is ADC. With using ADC, with help of ADC, we can append the same site cookie attribute to all the backend cookies. Now, if your application is used in a cross-site context and is being front-ended by Citrix ADC, one can leverage our policy infrastructure to append the same site cookie attribute to the cookie presented by the backend application with a value appropriate to application usage. Now, this will help application enable cross-site access without making any changes to the backend application code or configurations. Now in the example, I have shown one sample rewrite policy and action to configure and achieve this, that too without cost of any performance. And the second one is there are instances where ADC generated cookies are mainly to achieve persistency. So very common use case is a cookie persistency in a load balancing. We have group cookies persistency, and also other example is a GSLV site persistency. All these are the examples of ADC generated cookies. These are not the backend web server cookies. These are purely generated by ADC. And for this, our new changes, which is available in our latest releases across versions 13.0, 12.1, 11.1, 12.0, allows configuring and inserting cookie attribute to ADC generated cookies as well. Now this can be achieved with newly introduced variable literal ADC cookie attribute as shown in example below. ADC also gives flexibility to support all old incompatible clients as well. There could be cases where versions of browsers are old or they don't treat same site none in the intended way. Now these can be handled with option compute ADC cookie attribute, which allows conditional based insertion. So with this, overall Citrix ADC has a flexible solution to address this new browser changes and secure your cookies from any misuse or attack. And with this, we can avoid any incompatibility issue with the secure and changing browser behaviors. So the next topic is a request retry feature, or we can say a reload balancing feature. This is important and simple to understand feature. At present, if backend server send reset for any reason, front-end connections also get closed since ADC passes this reset to the front end. Not a great user experience. Also, client has to reconnect every time for such case. Now with recent releases, this behavior has been changed with a new powerful behavior, which is a request retry feature. Now let's see how it works. When a client sends a HTTP request or HTTPS request, and if the backend server reset the TCP connection, the reload balancing or retry feature allows the Citrix ADC appliance to choose the next available service and forward the request instead of sending a reset to the client. Now by doing ReLB, the client initiates the same request to next available service. Quickly, let's see how it works. The diagram explains the flow. The process starts with enabling AppQA feature. When the client sends an HTTP request, the virtual server sends the request to the backend server. Now, if the requested service is unavailable, the backend server resets the TCP connection for the request. Now, based on the AppQA configuration with retry option enabled and with the desired number of retry attempt specified, the virtual server uses the load balancing algorithm again to forward the request to the next available server. After the virtual server receives the response, the appliance forwards the response to the client. Now, few considerations here. If the number of available backend servers are equal or lesser to the retry count, and if all the servers send reset, the application will send 500 internal server error. Similarly, if the number of available backend server is greater than the retry count, and if the backend server resets the connection, the appliance forward the reset to the client. See, this is how the flow is. Quickly, I'm just walking over the configuration. This is very easy configuration to enable the feature. We just need to enable AppQA feature. AppQA is application level quality of service feature, which provides several flexibility and queuing logic advantages. You need to add AppQA action and define the number of retries. followed by add app QA policy with desired expression. And you need to bind this policy to the virtual server. That's it. This will do all the configuration. Quickly, I will show a demo of this feature. This is my vServer, which is already configured with 4 services on the backend, and all services, as you see, are up. I have configured servers in a way that 3 out of 4 servers will send the reset. Only one is the correct server. And this is the WIP IP. Now we'll follow the steps what we discussed in the last slide to configure this feature. This is my app QA action. I'm setting retry to 6, which is greater than the number of servers currently available. And this is my policy. With this command, I'm binding the policy to the vServer we discussed on the request path. Here you see that this policy is now a part of vServer. And this is the action. Now take a trace. We will send a request and verify the behavior through trace. Before that, I will clear all my stats. And here it goes. You can see the hit counts are 0 across. I have resetted it. These are the hit counts on the backend services. Now we have sent one curl request to the WIP IP. Now we can see the 200 OK response for the curl request. Let's see the trace and verify the behavior. Now this is interesting. We see the hit counts on all the backend services. Though we have sent only one request on the front end, we see hit counts on all the backend services. Let's see why. Let's open the trace. This is my trace file. Let's filter it with IP address. Yeah, here you see one request on the front end with a get request. And we are seeing a reset on the back end, the first reset, the second reset, and the third reset. And finally, the fourth server has given you a response with 200 OK, and which is forwarded to the front end. So this is how this feature works. So this feature is already available as part of 13.0 Q1 release. You can try it out. And in Q2, we are enhancing this feature further with including the 5xx and timeout responses. For them also, we are going to do a reload balancing or retry. Also, if we are seeing the reset during the connection establishment itself, at the TCP sync level itself, we are going to do the ReLP. So these are the two enhancements which are planned for Q2. But the one which I displayed now from the demo is already available and can be downloaded to try out. All right. So another very important enhancement, which is again part of 13.0 Q1 release, is GSLV parallel sync. Changes are considering the current Autosync behavior and how config is synced across GSLV nodes. Now, first, let's understand the existing behavior and working of Autosync. Currently, it works completely in a pure sequential manner. Master node has control and is responsible for all the jobs, like check whether the slave sites are reachable or not, connection establishment with all the slave site, pull the configuration from these slave sites, compare this with his own master configuration, see if there is a diff or any command missing, and if the command is missing, remotely fire the diff command to slave sites. And this entire process has to be repeated with all the configured slaves. So if you have more sites, the process became more and more longer. Now, what are the challenges having this design? We can see that since entire process is via master node, the process is very much sequential. Now, if the number of sites are high, as discussed, this process takes a lot of time, and sometimes it appears going endless. Other challenges are, what if slave node is unreachable? How long master should wait or keep retrying? What if configuration is huge? What if config changes very frequently? So you have to constant and multiple sync attempts. You have to make constant and multiple sync attempts. Also, what if MIP flaps cases due to delay or the latency? And this triggers the full sync. Now, having all these challenges, the entire model is not very much scalable. Now, the good news is this is changed now, and we have completely new design for GSLV sync, which overcomes majority of challenges and improve the overall stability and execution time. Sync operation is not sequential anymore, and it's parallel in nature. Let's see how new design works. Here the sync operations are now divided between both masters and slave sites. Earlier design, we have master only responsible for everything. But in the new design, master will just detect any change in his configuration and push the entire configuration to all the slave sites, and that too in a parallel manner. It's a job of slave site on the other hand, and it's his responsibility to get the config from the master, generate the diff, and apply any missing configuration. Now this process will eliminate any delay in entire synchronization process. So the GSLV parallel sync is highly recommended if you have GSLV deployments with a high number of sites. And this feature is also available in our Q1 release. Okay, so the last feature I want to touch today is the client IP insertion via ADC. Now the Citrix ADC appliance uses many ways to send the client information to the backend server. And one such method is by sending the client IP address in the TCP option of the first data packet itself. And this is what this enhancement is all about. The appliance uses the TCP option number in the TCP profile. The TCP option method includes both insert and forward functionality in carrying the client IP address to the backend server. As said, the IP address is carried in the TCP option number 28 by default, though it is configurable, as mentioned in the command here. Why default TCP option is 28 because many of the servers can understand this option as a client IP. But as mentioned, this is purely configurable. Now, some of the use case scenarios for why TCP option configuration is needed in Citrix ADC. For example, your backend applications want to learn the original client IP address for processing or accounting, and it is useful to select a language for a website based on GeoIP. Security purpose, where you want to blacklist immediately the selected IP address by seeing the first TCP packet itself. So how the component interacts, this is shown in the figure at the bottom right. A client send a request to Citrix ADC. ADC appliance, you must create a TCP profile, enable the TCP option feature, and specify the option number. The option, default option, again, I'm highlighting, it's option 28. Now, as part of insert operation, Citrix ADC insert the client details in the TCP option bound to the service. The client details are then sent to the backend servers. Now, if the incoming traffic is SSL or HTTPS, the client IP address in the option will be sent in the SSL client hello message, which is the first data packet at the TCP level. So this is again very important feature and very useful also. So that's all from my side. Dave, back to you.
All right, yes, thanks so much, Abhishek. So we got quite a few questions. I'd like to see if we can cover those in a brief moment here at the end of your section before we go into the next. So one of them is specifically about request retry, and I think a lot of people are wondering about this as well. I guess, can you explain at maybe a slight mid-level, what's the value, but why are we introducing request retry instead of or in place of the health probes? Can you explain how the two should be used together and what the difference is there?
Yeah, so definitely I can explain. So the first reason is this is the feature. If you are getting a reset, as of what I explained, you don't have to retry the request from the client side. So obviously monitoring can also help to see if your application is working fine or not, and if it is not working, you can move it out of the load balancing decision. But it is not always that any monitoring will help always. Now, when it comes to the, I said we are planning to enhance this feature as well for timeout cases or for 5xx response. So many times the server behaves little bit inappropriately. So this feature is useful in that case where it is not that server is down completely, but it is a little bit more inconsistent. So it is helpful on those scenarios.
Fantastic, thanks. And then jumping forward in your newer or the later feature in the presentation is about inserting the client IP address in TCP. I guess the questions here are, does SourceNet need to apply and would that add value there? And the second is connectionless TCP supported with inserting the client IP address?
What is the first question, Dave? Can you please repeat?
So in the case of SourceNet, is the client IP, we can see that client IP would be relevant in the case of, say, we're source netting the connection to the back end. But is that also available if you're not using SourceNet? So can you always embed, say, if the ADC were a proxy in this case?
Yes, we can do that, yeah.
Great. And then the second question is for inserting the client IP, is there a requirement that the TCP connection be stateful or can it be connectionless? In other words, can we make this like a transparent vServer where it is stateless? Will it work in that scenario?
Yes, so I have to check on this, Dave. I will get back on this thing. So this particular question, I will get back.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks for being honest.
Yes.
And then finally, the TCP options use case it's useful at the ADC level, but when would somebody want to see the client IP address on the server? So I guess the question here is, is there a specific homegrown application, or is there something else, some purpose of why you'd want to pass the client IP all the way through to the server for a TCP level connection?
Yeah, so those are the things which I discussed in the slide that you want to for any processing, if you want to learn the IP address, like if the server applications are dependent, they want to do some accounting based on the client IP address, because otherwise we are going to use the snap. So obviously on the server side, you have some context where you want to block those IP addresses, you can do straight away rather than having that database loaded to the ADC. But there could be multiple cases where you want to really send the IP addresses.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I think that pretty much takes care of what I see from the chat. If you wouldn't mind sticking around to answer a few more questions
Sure.
for us that come in, that would be much appreciated.
I will do
All
that.
right. Well, thanks, Abhishek. All right, so
Thank
with
you, Dave.
that, we're going to go into our next section here on pooled. But before we jump into pooled, I want to take a quick pulse and to see where people are in terms of, say, moving over into this new generation of licensing. So I'm going to bring up a poll, and if you could real quickly just let us know where you're at with pooled licensing. Perhaps if you've already deployed it, obviously the answer would be yes in the last 6 months. If you don't have any plan to deploy it, just tell us no. And if maybe you're considering it, say you just don't have pooled licensing, and maybe that's a good idea that you're thinking about considering it, might be a good way to look at it. So we're just trying to get a feel, because the next section here is all about pooled licensing. We're going to show how it works with business continuity. And we want to make sure what we're providing to you is something that you may be able to take away. All right, so we're getting about half of you have voted here. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in just a moment. And it looks like we're pretty well defined here. So it looks like from the results here that a few of you, I'd say a quarter of you that have responded, are currently using pooled. Maybe a quarter are not, and by and large, the majority of you do not yet have pooled licensing. So I think this presentation coming up and this topic that we'll be covering with Neharika and Omkar with the demo will show you the value of pooled and what we can do specifically in this new time of being able to move and be agile. So with that, I'd like to bring Neharika online. Neharika, are you with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, I hear you. So I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter.
All right.
All right, and you've got it.
I still don't see it.
Let me try taking it back. And we'll try once more here.
Okay. Yes.
Good. I see your slides.
All right. Good. Thank you, Dave. And hello, everybody. I'm Neharika Kamphalur, a product manager for pool capacity and licensing for Citrix ADC. And I also have Omkar Selvi, who will be covering the demo in the second half of this webinar. So I do hope you find this webinar useful. So let me go over the agenda first. In today's webinar, I will be covering through the benefits for pool, the top use cases for pool licensing, the recent features that have come out in the last 6 months, and followed by a demo. So let me get started. And before we jump to what is pool licensing, let's look at the changes that are happening in the world of IT today. So the workloads are more dynamic and distributed, which means that businesses need to enable flexibility while providing secure access at scale. So we do see customers are moving to hybrid multi-cloud, which means that they don't not only just have presence on-prem, but also are have presence on public clouds like AWS, Azure, GCP. The second change that we are seeing is, the companies or the enterprises are moving or leaning towards consumption-based usage and moving from CAPEX to OPEX economical model. And all customers look for platforms which support automation and visibility so that they can use that for driving business efficiency. So we are seeing technology, business, as well as consumption landscape that is changing. And with all the changes that are happening, licensing models, the models need to evolve to meet the requirements. So in today's hybrid multi-cloud era, Citrix ADC Pool licensing provides the needed flexibility, efficiency, and transparency. Now, ADC definitely, as you know, stands for Application Delivery Controller. Traditionally, ADCs used to come with, I'll say, fixed capacity, which used to be on-prem, and the licensing will be tied to hardware, software, or cloud. And it used to be very difficult to avoid a situation where one of the ADC boxes overused or in fact even underutilized. But with Citrix ADC Pool capacity, the technology allows customers to adjust the capacity. So it's more dynamic, it can be used, the resources can be used more efficiently, the capacity can be assigned across different form factors of ADC, and it's more transparent since Pool runs on ADM and it gives us a good overview of the system. In fact, I'll also add a point that Citrix Pool is only vendor which gives the flexibility to have a pool of capacity and assign it to different form factors on a need basis. With that, I just wanted to share some quick numbers where we are seeing that 81% of enterprises do have hybrid multi-cloud as their strategy, and 62% of public cloud users are present not just in one environment but multiple, like I'd say 2 environments. And it's been more than a year I've been managing Citrix ADC and seeing a pattern. All customers, even if they don't have like if they're not fully on cloud, they do want to be on-prem and have an option to move to cloud. So as more and more workloads are virtualized and it's transferring to new environments, there is a need to manage them more effectively, and there is a bigger need for ADCs going forward. So what is pool capacity? In the gist, I'll say pool capacity is a technology that decouples the software from the underlying ADC hardware. And ADC Pool is hosted and served on ADM, so it has to go hand in hand with ADM, as ADM acts as a licensing server for all the pool licenses. Now, we do have different form factors in ADC. Or NPX, SPX is the hardware form factor, and VPX, CPX, BLX are considered the software form factors. Now, all the hardware form factors requires a zero capacity box, which on which there is a capacity of pool, the bandwidth of pool and the instances of pool that run. And customers can buy this based on, on top of the starter pack, which is like the basic version, the basic amount of quantity that comes in, which can go on top of a zero capacity hardware. And you can always, scale it up as the need grows. So software form factors don't really need a zero capacity hardware, but this is it's basically the box and the capacity you want on ADM. So this is just a hypothetical example. Now, if we see on the left side, we used to have, I'll say, the form factors which used to be tied to, I'll say, a certain capacity. But with Pool, the whole scenario changes, right? Like this particular model allows us to get that whole 135 gig and spread it across MPX, SDX, whatever for different form factors. And this can be spread across geographies. It can be on different clouds or on-prem. So as you see, I'll say the most important benefit of pool licensing is flexibility, as it allows moving the capacity, between the physical and the virtual appliances, moving between clouds, geography, and we do have a pure subscription model that we offer. The second important thing is it offers a better economics, as it allows us to utilizing the resources with more efficiency, and it allows us to go granular. The third important thing is, like I mentioned, this goes on ADM. ADM is a single pane of glass where one can see the health of the system. I would say, be it certificates or which one is being overutilized, which ADC instance is being overutilized. You can do on and off, so you can get that high-level holistic view with ADM. The last point, but a very important point, is the business continuity. Now, pool capacity is very useful when customers have unexpected needs. Like, in today's situation where employees are working from home, there is a need to move to move the capacity. Everybody is seeing a surge in the traffic, and this is where pool capacity is really useful. Also, there can be multiple things that can go wrong when it comes to connectivity, and Citrix Pool provides 30-day ADC grace period for any issues that might be there in terms of connectivity, be it on the ADM side or the ADC side. I'll be going over this particular feature later in my slides, as this is one of the features we have worked on. So let us look at the top two cases. I've just included top two here, just to give you, since most of the audience, I'll say, doesn't know much about pool, this gives you an idea, if there is, there are two data centers, site A and site B, and you have 4 different NetScalers or ADCs with a certain capacity, right? Now, if we in pool capacity, what happens is all that capacity comes into one pool, which can be assigned to these zero capacity appliances as and when needed. So that's the most important use case. And the second use case is, again, having a capacity of pool allows us to move this not just on-prem, but also on cloud. So that was, that's one of the, I'll say, the other important use case, which gives us the option to move resources. And when the customer decides to completely go, I'll say, move from on-prem to cloud, we do allow decommissioning of the hardware. So this particular resource gets freed up, and then you can assign it back to cloud. So this is something that is available on Pool, and it's very useful. All right. I wanted to go over the quickly on the what we introduced as what we call as a simplified pool buying options, which allows the full license portability on-prem or cloud or any other form factor. Now, there are 4 different ways of buying pools. The top 1 and 2 here is the hardware option, and 3 and 4 is the software option. Now, let's just look at the first one. Now, a customer, if he has a box or an ADC, can convert to pooled using the starter pool and the ADM bundle, which is option 1, or they can purchase the zero capacity box, the maintenance, and the bundle, which includes the ADM vServers. The second one here is a subscription option where you have everything bundled together, which is the box, the starter pool or the capacity that needs to go on the box, and the ADM vServers. Now, again, both options, as needed, the customer can definitely add more bandwidth and instances as needed. Option 3 and 4 is for the software form factor, which is VPX, CPX, and BLX, which doesn't need hardware, but it comes in 2 different options. Again, with with and without ADM with, and you can see in 3 is a 20 gig 20 instance option, or the second one is 5 gig and 5 instance option. Just to highlight, there is a minimum, obviously, minimum guideline that we have for pools. So there is 4 boxes and 40 gigs for Americas, and 2 units and 20 gigs for rest of the world. And the 5 gig option is for, I'll say, rest of the world. Okay. Let's look at the new features for pool licensing that are available on Citrix ADM, which is Application Delivery Management. These features, at least I'll say, so we have bucketed this under two categories. The first one is we concentrated on improving the support for pool licensing on public cloud. And the second one is enhanced usability and availability. Now, the first two was available just on ADM on-prem, but now is also available on ADM service. And 3 and 4 is available on ADM. But before we go to the ADM features, let me show you the two different ways of deploying ADM service for pool capacity. Now, we do have two options. The first one is the on-prem agent, and the second one is where the agent is on public cloud. Now, if you see, there is an ADM agent, which is a broker who sits in between Citrix ADM and ADC. And the only difference between these two is the ADM agent where it is placed. Now, if it is on the on-prem, it's the on-prem version, or otherwise it's the cloud. So with that basic understanding, let me go through the first feature, right? Like earlier, we used to support single agents. We used to have single agent support. Now, again, in this particular diagram, you see there is an agent who is talking to two ADCs, and then this agent again connects to the ADM service, which is the licensing server. Now, earlier, we used to have only single agent support, but now we have multiple agent support. That means that the customer can have not just presence on one data center, but on two at the same time. So this provides more stability, management, and avoids single point of failure. This is a screenshot of how it looks on ADM. Omkar will be anyway covering these in detail, but I just wanted to give you a quick overview or a summary of how it looks on ADM. It's a simulated version where I have tried to show what are the different instances on ADM, and then how it would look in terms of under networks and pool capacity, if we have an ADM agent, how it looks, where it has a IP address tied to it. The second feature is, again, something which was on ADM on-prem. Now it's available on ADM service, which is an option to fetch licenses with, I'll say it's one step simpler. So it used to be, even now the first step is to register the agents with ADM service. Second step is to add ADC instances to those agents. And the third step used to be, you have to upload the file, but now we have a second option where you can just upload the licenses with the license access code you get when you're downloading it from Citrix portal. So this just makes it convenient, especially for customers who are moving their licenses from perpetual to pooled. This becomes very easy. It's also called the JAS protocol, if you know it by that. So this is a screenshot again, which shows it's as simple. So there are two different ways of uploading the license. The first one is you can upload the file, look from your local computer, or just use the code and say get licenses, and it just gets the license on the system. The third feature, which I wanted to talk about, is the grace period. Now, before talking about this feature, let's say that what is grace period, right? Grace period is when an authorized ADC instance, that means there is a connection between your ADC and ADM. So those authorized ADC instance lose connectivity to the licensed Citrix server. That's when it's called the grace period. Now, this might happen due to license expiration, or a server connectivity issue, or a human error. Now, in all those cases, Citrix provisioning continues to provision the system with 30 days of grace period. That means you will have the option to bring back your licenses. And we have looked at multiple combinations where this can go wrong. It can be at the ADC level, it can be at the ADM level, and we have standardized that to 30 days. So when there is a grace period, ADM does send out the notification to the customers. It does appear on the UI, the IO, as well as the syslogs. And also, if there is a new request made during the grace period and it's successful, the grace period is terminated. All right, the last feature that I wanted to talk about here is the accurate reporting of ADC. Now, earlier, the customer would not have any visibility on which ADC instance or a performance matrix is being overutilized. But this particular feature gives information about that. So we do have 5 different ways, or I'll say 5 different rate limiting counters, which will give us a picture on ADM. So first one is the the throughput limit reached, or it can be the CPU limit or the PPS, SSL. Now, if any of these rate limiting counters are being hit, or the customer is seeing a packet drop, what happens is ADM will show this as an error message, and it will give you a notification so that one can take action on these particular instances. So earlier it used to be, okay, it is overloaded. We will not know why it is overloaded, but now I think with these 5 inputs, it will just give a clear picture. So this is a preemptive measure. It gives more visibility to the customers and definitely more useful. All these features which I talked about is available. And the 4th one, which I'm talking about, we are working on further enhancement on this. So please do stay tuned for that. Next, over to Omkar for the demo on pool licensing. Dave, would you like to transfer the control?
Sure. That's over to you, Omkar.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Can you hear me properly?
We can hear you and see your screen.
Okay, perfect. So thanks, Niharika. That was a really good presentation and to set the basis for understanding pool licensing. So I'm going to show you the demo of pool licensing. How do you configure pool licensing and use it for your ADCs? So first thing you need to use pool licensing is a ADM service account. So once you have the account created, you can access the ADM service GUI, which will be something like this. So here, first thing you need to do, so basically to use pool licensing, you need to do configuration on the ADM service, and then there's some configuration needed on the ADC. But both of these configurations are one-time configuration. Once it is done, you can use pool licensing, or you can change the capacity on the ADC using ADM service. So let's get started. So step 1 would be to register ADM agents. So in the ADM service GUI under Networks tab, you can see there's an Agents tab. And here you need to register your ADM agents. So here you can see we have already registered 3 agents on 3 different platforms. So the first is in on-prem platform, the second is on AWS, and the third is on Azure. So this is the step 1 where you register your ADM agents to the ADM service. Next step is to register your ADC instances. So under the networks in the instances tab, you can see the map over here. So once you register your ADCs, you can see how they are located in the map. So here I have already registered few ADCs for this tenant, and you can see they are located at different geolocations. And also you can see some of them are in Azure, some of them are in AWS, and some are on-prem. So under Instances tab, in Citrix ADC tab, you can see the complete list of different ADCs which are registered. So once you have registered the ADC and agents, next thing is once you go to the Licenses tab, before you need to get license files from the Citrix. So for getting that license file, you need to provide a cloud host ID. So whenever you provide this cloud host ID to the Citrix back office, they'll generate the license file which are locked using this host ID. And you'll be able to see that host ID here in the ADM service GUI. It's just taking a little bit of time to load, but here you can see the host ID is mentioned on the ADM service GUI over here. So basically, you just provide this host ID to the Citrix back office, and you mention how much of a pool license capacity do you want, and they will generate the corresponding license files for you. So once you get the license files, you need to add those license files onto the ADM service. To do that, you need to click on this Add License File button. So it will, as Niharika explained, it will provide you two options. One is to upload license file from your local computer, and another one is to use license access code. So if you requested license files and requested them in the file format, you can use it. You can use it to directly upload it from here. Or if you don't want to handle the physical files, you can use the license access code that you got while requesting the license files from Citrix back office. Just enter that license access code over here, and hitting on get licenses will give you upload those license files onto your account. So once that is done, you can see the list of license files that you've uploaded in this table over here. So once that is done, you need to click on this Apply Licenses button. This will make sure that all these license files that you've uploaded will get applied and will be ready to use. Once these license files are applied, you can see that license expiry information will be updated here. So in this table, you can see different features, the count of those features, and the days to expiry. So this will be a good indication for you to know when your licenses are going to expire, and you can extend the expiry or validity of those license files. So that's about the configuration that you need to do on the ADM service side. The next step is to do configuration on the ADC side. But before that, I just want to show you how where you can see the license usage data. So under the licenses tab, you can see there are some sub tabs. So if you go to the pool capacity tab, so here you can see that the license usage information for different edition of licenses. So this is for the standard edition, this is for the advanced or enterprise edition, and this is for the premium or platinum edition. So all these edition basically are differentiated by different features of the ADC that it supports. And along with this capacity licenses, you also need instance licenses. So this instance license basically determines the number of ADCs that can be part of this pool capacity. And you can see the total and used out of this capacity over here. So for here in the standard bandwidth, we have total 20 Gbps capacity, and currently 18 Gbps is being used. And you can see the detailed explanation of this 18 Gbps over here in this table. We can show that 3 ADCs are sharing this pool of standard bandwidth. One is 8 Gbps, 5 Gbps, and 5 Gbps. So now how do we configure the ADC here? So let me show you this by going to the ADC GUI. So now I'll be switching to the ADC GUI. So you can see this is a Citrix ADC instance. I'm accessing its GUI. So let me just log back in. Okay, so this is the Citrix ADC GUI. Hit continue, and under the configurations, you need to go to the systems tabs. Under systems, you can see there's a licenses tab. So here, one thing to notice is the licensing mode for this ADC is Express. And this is the important point. As Niharika explained in the presentation, you need to have zero capacity ADC. So this is what that zero capacity ADC looks like in the field. The licensing mode for that ADC will be express. If it is not express, then that instance cannot be used as part of pooled license. So on AWS, you can see it as a BYOL type license, that is bring your own license. So now to the configuration. So here you can see this manage licenses button. You need to click on that. Then you need to click on add new license. Then it presents you with three options. To use pooled licensing, you need to select use remote licensing option. So once you select use remote licensing option, there are a few configurations that you need to select. The first one is remote licensing mode. So we support three different modes of remote licensing. One is CPU licensing, another is SQL licensing, that is check-in, check-out licensing, and the third one is pool licensing. So as we are going to use pool licensing, we'll select pool licensing, and then you need to provide the server name or server IP address. So this is the IP address of the agent with which this ADC has been registered with the ADM service. If you don't know which ADM agent this ADC is registered with ADM service, you can find that on the ADM service GUI under Instances tab. So once you put that address, the licensing ports by default is 27,000, and it needs to be this 27,000. You shouldn't change that. So you need to provide some ADM credentials, which is used to register this ADC with ADM service. But since we have already registered this device, this call is going to fail, as you can see over here. But if you haven't registered this device, it should succeed. It should register this ADC with the ADM service, and then it will set the license server. So it can take few seconds for setting this license server. So we need to wait for license server to respond back here. So as you can see over here, it is requesting license server in the right bottom corner. It's requesting license server for some data. So we'll wait for license server to respond back. Once the license server responds back, you can see a pop-up window in which you can see the total bandwidth ADM service has, the total available bandwidth that you has, and then you can allocate accordingly. So this is that pop-up box. Here you can see that. So here, first thing is there are options to select the edition of license that you want to use. So there's Platinum. Here you can see total instance is 65, total available is 17, and total bandwidth available is 550, but currently there is 422.7 Gbps available. So similar to Platinum, you can also see how much is available for enterprise and also for the standard. So right now I'm going to set this ADC instance to the Platinum edition, and I'm going to set it to 3 Gbps, that is 3000 Mbps. So you just put the allocation value over here and hit on get licenses. So this will make sure that your configuration on the ADCs is done. But before this changes take effect, you need to do a reboot on this appliance. So I'm going to hit reboot, and it's going to do a warm reboot on this ADC. So as you can see, it can take minimum 1 minute for this ADC to reboot. So by the time this ADC is rebooting, let's go over to the ADM service GUI and let's see if we can see this ADC over there. This is ADM service GUI, what we've seen before. So one thing to notice over here is total available premium bandwidth is 550 Gbps and used is 127.3 Gbps. So once that ADC is done rebooting, you can see this value of used will change, and you can see that ADC entry in this table. One more thing to notice over here is there are different form factors which are using this premium bandwidth. So there's MPX, there's a VPX, and there's an SDX. So as you can see, the same pool can be shared between different form factors of ADC. Also, another thing to notice is there are different platforms used for this different ADCs. So the MPX, VPX, and the SDX over here are on-prem, while the fourth row represents an ADC, which is on Azure. So, and currently there's a ADC on the AWS, which is going to be part of this same pool. So this way, you know that this is to represent that different form factors and different platforms are able to share the same bandwidth pool. So now you can see the used capacity has changed from 127.3 to 130.3. And we should be able to see a new entry added here of AWS ADC. And you can see that the capacity allocated is 3 Gbps. So since this new ADC is added, we see the changed capacity from 127.3 Gbps to 130 Gbps. So all this is the first time setup that you need to do on the ADC and the ADM. But suppose if you want to change the allocated capacity of one of these VPXs, then you can do that from the ADM service itself. For example, if you want to increase the bandwidth allocation on this VPX on-prem, you just have to come to this GUI and click on this arrow button in the action column. Once you do that, you will have an option to change allocation or release allocation. So just hit on change allocation. It will give you the similar pop-up box as you got on the ADC GUI. So here also, you can make some changes to the bandwidth, whatever you want, or you can even change the edition if you want. But only thing to remember over here is when you change the edition, there is a reboot needed on the ADC instance. So that's going to cause you downtime during the reboot period of the ADC. So just that's the one thing that you need to keep in mind while changing the edition. But if you are in the same edition, like we hear this ADC is on premium edition, and if you just want to change the allocated capacity, no reboot is needed on the ADC. And you can see the changes on the ADM service. So this way, you can use pool licensing to share pool capacity between ADCs of different form factors, different platforms, which are separated by some geolocation. So that's about it from the demo of pool licensing. So Dave, over to you.
All right, thanks, Omkar. Thanks for the very informative hands-on demo. So that's very practical, and I think it goes to show just how flexible and easy it is to use the service. We got a whole lot of feedback during the demo and on Niharika's presentation. I'd like to just take a moment to address some of the questions that have been asked. So one of the questions that came up is whether this part of ADM can run in AWS and in Azure. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. However, we're looking at something like where you would be connecting either ADM on-prem as ADM software through a VPN or a tunnel into AWS or Azure to be able to access the devices there. Or if you're using ADM service, you could deploy what's called an agent. The agent would then be that local point of contact for the devices in the cloud. Another question that came up is, I can see that the pooled works for bandwidth, but does vCPU work the same? Can I also allocate licenses using the pooled capability there? And the answer is yes. So you can use allocate what Omkar showed, which is allocating throughput, but you could also do it by vCPU. So if you're using CPU as your licensing method, that works just the same as it does with pooled. And then the other question I see that came up quite a bit is, how long are licenses valid for? What happens when my device goes offline? Does it need to be always reachable and accessible to the license server? And the answer to that is yes, the instances do need to have constant contact to ADM in order to update the license and to make changes to the license. But if that connection is interrupted, as Niharika mentioned in the presentation, the ADC will go into what's called a grace period for up to 30 days. So if it's not practical for you to keep the license server always available and reachable, or perhaps you have an issue impacting the connectivity between your devices or just doing network maintenance, then just rest assured that the device itself will not have an interrupt of capacity or connectivity until the license server is reachable again up to 30 days. So with that, and then final question here is, obviously you deploy an agent into the cloud to be able to do the licensing there. I think the question on that is, that introduces a single point of failure for management. Can it support redundant agents? And the answer to that is also yes. So the ADM software will use a primary agent. It could use a backup agent in order to manage and monitor the ADC. And you can have multiple agents per site or per location. So I think that covers everything in terms of what I see on the Q&A panel. If anyone has any other questions, I request that you go ahead and ask the questions while we have some of our presenters online to get back to you. So with that, I would like to cover just a little bit of news and views here, and also recap a little bit on the value of pooled licensing and business continuity. So a question that came up very on in our webinar today was, what happens if there's a surge in traffic to a small website being load balanced by the ADC, and how does Citrix help keep that website online? So I think we've shown today the value of pooled licensing. So pooled will give you the ability to scale up the site if more bandwidth is needed, but there's other things that could affect the sudden availability of a site. It could be, maybe it's not a huge spike in traffic, maybe the site's being DDoS attacked, or maybe there's a huge surge in bots that are attacking it, or maybe you're getting a security breach and it's affecting the resources on the server. With the ADC, you have several different approaches that you can take to ensure the sudden surge of traffic is mitigated. One, we have rate limiting. Another way is we have the web application firewall, so we can apply security policies, and we have security insight to help you have that visibility within our application delivery management software. And we also have Bot Insight, a relatively new feature that helps you identify whether your site's being attacked by bots or if it's just legit user traffic. And ADM will allow you to see all of that and allow you to make an informed decision as to whether you just need to allocate more bandwidth perhaps, or if you need to take more action, like more stringent and granular policies about who gets access to the device. So I got a couple people asking in there, I see this word ADM, is that new? Is that a new product? Is it really mass? So yes, there is a new brand name and a new product name. So if you're familiar with NetScaler, the new name for NetScaler is ADC. And if you're familiar with the management and analytics system, that's MAS. The new name for that is Application Delivery Management, or ADM. So we've done this for a number of other networking products as well. The products themselves have not changed at all. So really the only difference here is in the writing, and that's just the name of the product, just following with the times and trying to unify the names of our products so they appear a little more congruent because they are all under the same umbrella. So with that, and before I close out, we do have another webinar coming up. It's called Building a Next-Gen Hybrid Cloud. This is very similar to the Networking Masterclass, but the focus here on this one-time only webinar at the end of the month of April is that it'll be a one-time, and it'll be going deep on what technologies and networking protocols, networking appliances and solutions that we have for growing and developing your solutions in a hybrid and multi-cloud world, maintaining business continuity, which is the utmost of importance with dynamic workloads today. And in presenting on that webinar, we have our SEs, Vioma Gandhi and Rick Davis, joining, and they will very strong experts, very well seasoned in the field and very long time employees at Citrix. very knowledgeable on the technology and the products that they'll be talking about. So I invite you to go to bit.ly/citrix-webinar and sign up for that hybrid multi-cloud webinar at the end of the month. So before we wrap things up, I want to get a quick poll and see kind of where you're at in terms of your journey based on the content today. So at the beginning of the webinar, I ran a quick poll to see, were you looking at using pooled licensing in the last 6 months? Is that something you were considering? Based on what you saw today, I'm really curious to find out what is the relevant use case for you in pooled. Does the content make it seem more viable to you? And if so, what do you find most compelling about using pooled licensing? So are you, for example, are you looking to use it just to move into the cloud? Are you looking at just because it makes it easier to manage your products? Does it make it easier, period? Very curious how that goes for all of you. So it looks like we've got about half of you have chimed in already, and it looks like we're fairly evenly split, which is interesting because it shows that you guys are interested in this. So it looks like the top answer there is the one at the very beginning. So why would you go to pooled? It's obviously for the flexibility. So in continuing that, we'll make sure that our solutions that you use pooled licensing and we make available to you and continue to expand, keep flexibility front and foremost in mind as we continue to grow and then develop that feature set. All right, so let me go back over here, and just one thing is that we only meet once a month here for the networking masterclass, but I just don't like losing touch. So just keep in mind, we have additional videos coming out, additional demos, some of them narrated by myself, Dave Potter, and they're on and can be found under the Citrix TV account on YouTube. So there is a little shortcut here if you're interested in a cheat, just going straight to the networking playlist, or you can go to youtube.com, search for Citrix TV and drill down to the playlist section and look for the networking playlist. And there you'll find all videos that we produce, both from engineering, from product management like myself, as well as other parts of the organization with this complete focus on networking. So in fact, just this month, and in fact, yesterday, we released 5 additional videos on ADM and showing specifically what you can do to try to see what the health is of your services, even if they're not completely down. So I think it's a great place to go. I subscribe to this. I always watch every video that comes out because I just love to see the content there. So if that's your thing and you're always curious to find out what's new, we have a lot of stuff that comes out specifically, not just demoed on the masterclass, but also related products, all with a networking focus on Citrix TV under the networking playlist on YouTube. All right, it's that time. We've come up to the end of the webinar, and it's my turn to say thank you for joining. And now it's your turn to win the grand prize giveaway. So today we are giving away a Sonos Play One speaker. And to win this prize, I'll be asking a question from some of the content today. So now in order to win this prize, you'll need to open up the Q&A panel in your control panel of the GoToWebinar. And be ready to type in your answer there. So I will not look for the answer in the chat pane, I'll look for it in the Q&A panel. So as soon as I ask the question, if you would throw your answer into the Q&A panel, the first person with the correct answer will win. And we do have some favor to ask. If you have won the prize in the last 6 months, we just kindly request that you hold back and give the opportunity to someone new to win the prize today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask our question. So there was a feature early in our presentation. Can you name the new core ADC feature that ensures that each HTTP and HTTPS request is successful? So there was a couple of features that Abhishek mentioned. I see a number of answers coming in. And it looks like we have a winner, Mark G. Mark G, the answer there is ReLB. So thank you. Thank you guys for chiming in with your answers. I see a lot of stuff there from secure cookie to flex licensing. The correct answer here for ensuring that every client request is successful is the request retry feature, or also known as reload balancing. All right, so with that, That brings us to the end of another great networking masterclass, and it remains only to thank our great crew of presenters. Thank you for their time, for sharing with us today, and of course to you, our audience, for sticking around, asking your questions, making it interactive, and for making this so much fun with your time. I'm Dave, and until next time, goodbye.